So I help men find themselves, whether you feel lost, maybe your health is out of control, your relationship sucks, you have no passion in your work. I help individuals who are just like me work through the process that I've gone through my entire life to find fulfillment, happiness, balance, energy, vitality, amazing relationships, a purpose-driven life. And that's what I'm here to kind of share with you. So if you're new to my channel, thank you. I hope you might subscribe to more of my videos. I have been in the coaching world for the last 10 years. But to give you a little bit of background, I figured I'd throw out this video for anyone who doesn't know me, and this is your first introduction to Johnny King. This is my story. So I will keep it brief. I was born in Florida, spent a couple years there when I was a little guy. Then we moved up to Westport, Connecticut, when my dad got transferred up to Manhattan. And then eventually around the age of 8, we moved to St. Louis, Missouri, for school, a boarding school, kind of a day school, boarding school, a public, not a public, it was a private kind of Christian school. So we went there, and that's where I spent the majority of my upbringing. My father was a workaholic. I was one of 5 children. I'm the middle child. I have brothers on either side of me, and then on the other side of them, my oldest and my youngest sister. And we grew up as a tight family. And my mom was a saint. She ran around town, taking us to every, sporting event, concert, practice, anything you can imagine. And she was full-time chauffeur, full-time laundry woman, full-time, grocery shopper. We were blasting through gallons of milk left and right as we were growing. So that being said, my dad was a workaholic without a doubt. He was very driven because he was raised poorly in Minnesota. And so he had told himself he would never, ever experience that as an adult. And so we very rarely saw him. I don't have a whole lot of memories of him. Even when he was around, he might be physically there, but emotionally, I don't think he was all that present. I just don't have a whole lot of memory. I very much looked up to my older brother as my male role model. But beyond that, I connected with masculine male role models on TV or in the movies. So I remember for like my 3rd or 4th Halloween as a little guy, I was He-Man. Yeah. And then I was looking just so much into Superman and Iron Man and Spider-Man and Batman and Arnold Schwarzenegger, all the muscles and things like that, right? But that being said, my father did well financially. He started a business. He bought my grandfather's business from him, bought him out of debt. Right as we moved to St. Louis, and my dad had kind of cashed out of a bunch of stock options and things like that at his previous company, and had a good chunk of change to invest in building a house, which was beautiful, and buying this company. So I went to school being raised, essentially by my mom, my older sister, my school teachers, which were all women, my art teacher, which was a woman, my Sunday school teachers, which were women. I was surrounded by women all day, every day for the most part, which I think a lot of us men were. And it's just now, in the last probably decade, have I really seen the effects of that. And so I'll get around to that in a second. But I was teased when I was little for being the rich kid. I lived in a very nice big home. My dad built a beautiful home. Each one of us children had our own rooms and our own bathrooms. It was probably like a 10,000 square foot home, which again was incredible. And yet behind the scenes, the house was on the market, off the market. There was very much this up and down of any entrepreneur's type lifestyle of, abundance and scarcity. One season the business would be doing great, and the next season he was thinking about maybe closing the doors. So, but that teasing and coupled with him not being around, and my resentment of not having a father where I could see other buddies having great relationships with their fathers, built up this this resistance and this anger, this pain towards not only my dad, but also towards the money that he provided us. All the, the means, the material things that my dad, was kind of hoping that would make up for his lack of being there, I started to reject. And so I at a very young age started having some serious money issues that I have been, working through for the last, 20, 25 years just as an adult, since, being a teenager, and mismanaging money, pushing it away because I felt that money was the reason for disconnection, from people. People are like, oh, you're rich. I'm like, no, that's my father's money. That's his stuff. I'm just like you. I want to be connected with you. And they're like, no, you're rich, all this stuff. And I felt my work ethic, my identity was challenged as a little boy and eventually teenager and then a man. So that's my kind of upbringing. I played sports all my life. I was very much an athlete. I remember in between freshman and sophomore year in high school, I bought a bench press because as an 8th grader, I did this long 5-page report on Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I learned about how he used to lock himself in his room to work out. And he saw exercise as his way of getting out of his shitty situation in Austria, which eventually he did, right? And so I started seeing like, and my parents were overweight. They were very much into living to eat. That's pretty much is all that we would do when we vacation. We would eat, brunch, if you will, just long enough to where then we were talking about where we're going to go for lunch an hour later, right? And so it's just one meal to the next. And I wanted to be out there on the beach playing and that sort of thing, right? So I saw, myself being resistant to eating desserts, eating crappy food, even though, man, we grew up with the worst food, Pop-Tarts and waffles and high fructose corn syrup. I was a child of the 80s, right? So we didn't know. My mom didn't know, but giving us a lot of crap food. But I started working out, and so I started bench pressing. And so I got these big, pecs as a sophomore in high school. And I still had these tiny little arms, right? And one of my ex-girlfriends was like, have you been working out? I was like, yep, I sure have. She's like, but your arms are so tiny. I was like, fuck, damn it. So I realized I needed to start having a little bit more balance in my workout, not just do bench press all day, every day. So anyways, had a long-term relationship through high school. That was my first love for 3.5 years. She broke my heart, but learned a lot from that. And then after college, man, I could not settle down. Well, let's even backtrack. Before I went to college, people would ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to go to school and study? And I was like, honestly, I have no freaking clue. I didn't have clarity then even, right? So I felt like I struggled with finding a sense of purpose even from the get-go. All I knew, and I remember saying this, is I said, all I know is that I want to be, what did I say? I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be an example for good. And I didn't know beyond that. And so I thought, well, my dad's an entrepreneur. He's a business owner. I guess I want to be a business owner because I couldn't think of anything else that was, higher than that or a higher position of leadership than that, right? So what did I do? I went to school and became an artist. I became a fine artist. I always loved art, right? So I had that skill for not only being an athlete, but I also loved to draw and color and do all those things. So I went to school for fine arts and graphic design, and I dated throughout college, but the breakup from the high school heartbreak definitely kept me from leaning into relationships. So had a lot of fun through college, but I was just excited to get out of college because I knew once I could get out of college, then real life began and I'd be able to prove myself, right? Where though, once I got out of college, I found myself not wanting to settle down because I felt like if I settled down, I could see my life flying past me and waking up one day as a 45-year-old with no wife, no kids, no life other than what I had created on the computer, right? So that scared me enough to actually leave graphic design, to not follow my my bachelor degree in fine arts. And so I went off on kind of a search for, working with family. I was always looking for something that tied closer to my heart. So I wanted to work with family. So I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad in college. So I immediately went out and found a mentor, a real estate mentor, and worked with her for a year, buying, selling, lease optioning, foreclosures, all that stuff, learning the real estate gig. Eventually moved from St. Louis down to work with my brother in Florida in real estate. That didn't work. I then moved to New Mexico to work with my sister and her husband in real estate, and did that for a while. That's where I actually met my now ex-wife down in Albuquerque. And I got out of that. Once I realized, man, she was the woman of my dreams. This is the woman I've been waiting for my entire life. And I'd fallen in love. I immediately was like, I gotta get a better job. I gotta get more money. I gotta, save for a honeymoon, a ring, a house, education. My mind just went into full blown, providing mode, and I remember that day when she drove away, and I was like, damn, that's the woman of my dreams. I gotta step up for that. And so sure enough, things actually changed at that point between she and I. At that point, my top priority was to find love and connection, and she was everything. And once I found her, what popped above that was certainty that I could provide for her, a life and all that stuff. And away we went. And so I left working with my sister right before the bubble burst of 2007, 2008. Thank God. I just was lucky with that. My siblings definitely struggled through that real estate burst. But then I moved back to St. Louis and got a job with a startup company. And my ex-wife actually was still finishing up school, so she moved to St. Louis as well. And then my mom got sick. My mom came down with breast cancer. And between the time that we kind of started to realize something was wrong in, say, June or July, man, she was gone. She was gone in October. It was so fast, just like that. And so that was really, really tough. But I had already started planning my engagement. So 2 weeks later, I got engaged. And so we got engaged, we started planning our wedding, we got married the next summer, and that was tough, man, without my mom being there, but such is life, right? But I learned a lot about that. My mom, I was struggling because my mom didn't seem like she had a whole lot of fight in her. She felt like, it kind of seemed like, well, my job here is done. I've raised all you kids. My little sister was in her last semester of college, and my mom seemed to peace out. And so I was really struggling with that. Well, when I was married for our 2nd year anniversary, my ex-wife gave me a ticket to Unleash the Power Within, Tony Robbins, and my mind was fucking blown. It was blown. I was like, holy shit. He woke up something in me that I had lost. And I was like, you know what? Whatever he's doing up there, if I could do even 0.5% of what he's doing, I'd be fulfilled beyond measure. And I felt like he had life hacked. He had found the way to be happy and fulfilled and successful. And so I went all in on Tony Robbins and personal development. And as I was texting my ex at the time, she's like, Johnny, it makes so much sense. Think about all the books that are in your bookshelf at home. And sure enough, they've all been on personal development, mental, personal psychology, why we do what we do. I've always loved that stuff. I just hadn't connected the dots. And so that being said, I loved it so much that going back and forth between the job that I had right at that time, which was working for my father's business, which I was not fulfilled or happy with, I, got impassioned with, Tony Robbins and videos and that sort of thing. And so I ended up going to Unleash the Power Within again 6 months later. But at the very first Tony Robbins event, I realized I needed to quit my job because it was robbing me of any sense of purpose and passion that I could bring to my relationship. And she was the most important thing in my life. And yet she was actually 3rd or 4th on the list. Intellectually, I think she's my number 1, but operationally, she became 4th or 5th. And she brought that up to my awareness. I was like, you know what? You're right. So I dropped out of my MBA program. I stopped bodybuilding. I was doing all these things that were distracting me from being a husband, because quite honestly, I remember the moment when I was walking away from our wedding reception back to the honeymoon suite. In my mind was not like, oh yeah, honeymoon suite. It was not. It was pure fear. It was like, I have no fucking clue with how to be a good husband. I had no idea. I had done a good job, as a boyfriend. I kind of winged my way through the engagement, but actually being a good husband, I didn't see my dad really do that. He wasn't around. And so I was freaked out of my mind. And I just started running. I just started running in the sense of just becoming a workaholic, just like my dad had done, right? It makes sense. And yet I left my ex-wife emotionally starved for the 2.5 years that we lasted. And so as I was coming, fast forward again, to Tony Robbins, I decided I need to leave my job because I need to put her back as number one versus where certainty and making money and significance and all that stuff for working for the family business had become more of a priority than my love, being there for her emotionally. And so I went to that second Tony Robbins event 6 months later, and it was like, bro, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed except that you've been just thinking about doing something. So I was like, fuck this. I'm going home. I'm quitting my job. I'm going to invest in, I don't even know what I'm going to do. I just know I need to do something that I have passion for, because I would come home and my ex-wife was a ballerina, a professional ballerina, and she loved her craft. I mean, it was like ingrained into the fiber of her being, right? She would come home every day like stoked, or maybe there was drama. She just was very emotional in a good way about what she did for a living. And I was a complete flatliner. She'd be like, after she would kind of like, give me her medal report, then she'd be like, oh, and how's your day? And I was like, same old, same old. She's like, no, I mean, come on, what happened? I was like, I honestly have no recollection of what happened today. I was clearly trading hours for dollars. I was giving away my life to something that I felt like I needed to do. I mean, I had the house, I had the wife, we had the dog, I had my dream truck, I had a great paying job, and yet I was so dead inside. It was rough, really, really brutal. And so coming out of Tony Robbins, I was like, I gotta, he woke back that spirit up in me. I'm like, I gotta raise my standards. And so coming home from that second UPW event of his, unfortunately, my wife at the time picks me up from the airport and she says, it's over. And I was like talk about the worst pain. Take what I felt when my mom passed away, at 61 years old, which I thought was way too early. It is way too early. And you multiply that times 100, 1,000, that's what I felt. Like my world was ending. And so I remember that night I was crying on the couch, wallowing in my own self-pity. And I thought to myself, with or without her, because I was thinking, well, shit, am I going to actually go quit my job now still? And my thought goes, if I stay with my job because that's comfortable and a security blanket, that's me choosing back into the man that has brought about this lifestyle that I fucking hate, And yeah, it looked good on paper. It looked good on social media. But in truth, man, I was hating everything about it. Except for my wife, the dog. I'm like, there was things in my life that I was proud of, but me as a man, I had no pride. I knew I was playing at maybe 20% of my full potential, and my greatest fear has been getting to the end of my life and feeling I had untapped potential. And so she jettisoned, which again, I don't blame her. Grass is greener. She did her thing. I told her too, I would not have wanted to be married to me either. So you're divorcing that guy, and guess what? I just divorced that guy. So please know that whoever you think I was, he's gone. This guy here is a new guy, So she made her decision. She went off, and I said, you know what? At the end of the day, I still need to follow my passion. So I quit my job, and that started my journey. One of my really, really good friends, Lewis Howes, he was there for me. He invited me to one of his, a keynote event that he was speaking at down in San Diego. I remember that $1,500 ticket was the most expensive thing I've ever bought by a single click, and I was freaking out of my mind, but I was like, you know what? I'm going for it, because personal bankruptcy or not having a job or income and going into credit card debt was not nearly as horrible as it was to have your heart ripped out, which is what I was experiencing at the time, So at Tony Robbins, I had invested in a program too, his Mastery University. So I had 2 years of content that I was going to go to: Date with Destiny, Life and Wealth Mastery, Business Mastery, things like that. So I knew I was committed to that, and I had 3 months of coaching support. And I swear to God, between Lewis Howes supporting me with kind of creating my very first info product, which he and I drew on a napkin in San Diego, to my Tony Robbins coach holding me accountable through our calls, those 3 months got me through the hardest, most difficult 3 months of my life. And I failed to tell you too that before my ex had left, about a year and a half into our marriage, we were putting so much pressure on my dad. Like, my dad was just gone. He was just kind of like gallivanting around the world. Now, in retrospect, I can see he was mourning the loss of my mom, his best friend, but he was also asking a big question. And that question was, does he continue to live a lie, or does he come out? And so with enough pressure of us as his 5 children and grandchildren, he actually came out with his truth, which was that he was gay. And so, yeah. So I lost my mom, I lost my ex, my dad came out. It was a very, to say the least, emotionally challenging 3 years of my life. Okay. And here I was, 30 years old, with half my furniture, with a wall full of like 7 different wedding photos and about 25 empty nails, because she had taken all of the photos and the frames. And I left that there for 10 months while I was living in that apartment. Because I was like, as long as I feel energy and resistance and angst, I knew I needed to handle that shit before I just grabbed it and boxed it and tried to shove it away just like I had done everything else, right? So I stuck with that pain. I hung in there. I started my business, my very first business, because that first info product didn't do shit. My buddy Lewis House sent me another product that was a $97 info product of how to start a 6-figure boot camp in 90 days by Craig Ballantyne and Steve Hochman. And I bought that thing. I was like, I can fucking do this. The light bulb went off because I had actually already started coaching women on like health and weight loss and but I didn't know what the hell I was doing at all. I really wasn't. And the light bulb that went off was like, they keep asking me, just help me lose weight. Don't get into like the skeletons in my closet. Just help me lose weight. And I realized I didn't have any rapport with them to start becoming their therapist, right? I had the heart, I had the desire to be there to support them as I wish I had my mom. But man, the boot camp became my way of giving them what they say they wanted so that I could ultimately give them what they truly needed, which was transformation. So I started my first boot camp location in 2010. That did extremely well. Once, at the point where I was doing 13, 14, 15 grand a month, I hired I had several trainers, but I finally hired the man, Mr. CJ Thomas, who eventually bought my boot camps from me. And I opened another location. And so I had multiple locations over the years, but I was working more on the business versus working in the business. And I remember Lewis was challenging me multiple times because he was there with me through the hardest times of my life, saying, dude, you need to pull yourself out of the business. You're married to this business. And if you're not there, then it's going to fall down. You have to figure out systems, procedures. You've got to leverage people to support you. Otherwise, it's not a business. Truthfully, it's just a job. And I was like, you're so right. So enabling, more and more trainers and being able to manage them. I launched my women's weight loss retreat. So I did several retreats in St. Louis. I started doing live events, and then my online coaching business took off, and people were contacting me through Facebook. Could you help me? Could you help me? Absolutely. And so long story long, once my online business took off enough, my virtual business, I was like, you know what? I don't think I need to stay here anymore. Where would I want to live if I could live anywhere? And so I moved here to Denver. The mountains had always called to me. I felt like a man when I'm up in the mountains, up in the woods. And so about a year after that, of moving to Denver, I sold off my boot camps to CJ, and I've been full-time coaching since then. So that's been the story of my, with a lot of detail, obviously, that I'm just kind of breezing on by. But that is where it brings me to the present day, where I am working primarily with men now, helping them create that, not only that science of achievement, which Tony Robbins talks about, but the art of fulfillment, right? So many of us are lost because we don't know what it means to be a man, right? We didn't have good examples or mentors, right? It's no wonder that we have so many poor examples of men who have gotten to certain levels of, power or authority, And we're finding out whether it be Bill Crosby or other individuals, taking advantage of women, abusing not only themselves through, substance abuse, but taking advantage of women, boys, girls. It's just given the rest of us kind of a horrible name. And I feel like a lot of men who are silently suffering on the sidelines are scared to even speak up because they just feel like they're going to get attacked by those that are impassioned by the Me Too movement, which has been amazing. The equality, the power, the growth, the strength that women have been making in our society over the last, couple of years, but even let's say the last 50 years from where women were in the 1950s and 60s till now. So that being said, it's time for men to evolve. I've been focusing on this my entire life. My marriage failed. I've struggled in business. I've lost money that I've worked so hard for. My health has crumbled and I've built it back up. I've got myself to where I am today because I've been focusing so much on personal development, pouring into myself, that now it's time to really connect with other brothers. And so if this is resonating with you at all, subscribe to my YouTube channel here, reach out to me or make a comment below. Let me know if any of this resonates with you or that you see parts of yourself in me, because man, there's patterns that we all go through and there's not that many, but it's important for us to bond together and to become, more emotionally evolved, connected with who we are, to be able to speak what we're feeling, right? And not feel like that's weak. We can still be very, very masculine, strong, and yet still be vulnerable and connect with other brothers, with our women in our lives, with Mother Nature. We need to look at bringing all of us up together versus looking more at the old school paradigm, which is I win and you lose. It's not a competition, because if you lose, I lose. Or if I lose, you lose. We all lose together or we all win together. The whole crux of this solution to life, if you could boil it down to 2 words, is win-win. It's got to be a win-win. You've got to be doing stuff in your life that makes you passionate, that brings your joy and your strength and your masculinity out, right? You got to find a mission, a purpose that is far bigger than you, right? You have to take care of your body, because if you're not taking care of your health, then there's no foundation in which to build anything, right? You don't have the health, the energy, the vitality to go all in on your work, whether it's, working for a company, working for yourself, being an artist, being a musician, whatever it is. You have no real foundation from which to build off of if you don't have your health, right? And then beyond that, without having your health, without having a mission that's bigger than yourself, where you get to come home, to your loved ones and feel like you're alive and you feel like you're a freaking lion, then you really need to focus on those relationships, because all those other things could be actually great, as they were for me. I was making money, I was doing great, I was contributing a lot, I was healthy, I was doing all those things, and yet my relationship to my woman was so crappy because I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know what her love languages were. I didn't know, how to fill her up, and I didn't know how to fill myself up, that all of it was for naught, and it had to crumble down. I had to go through what I went through for me to have gotten to this point, to be at the point where I am stepping into further and further my own kinghood, if you will. And yes, my name actually really is Johnny King. But this is about myself. It's about you. It's about all of us stepping into our greatness. It's about us stepping into becoming kings of our kingdom, right? And this is not about conquering other kings. This is about becoming an evolved man 2.0 that is no longer the way that we've showed up in past generations. And we need to stop the generational passing of fucking shame, heartache, being emasculated, not knowing, indecision, not being clear with what we want to do, just being kind of lost, and then passing that on to our sons, the next generation, or our daughters, or being unfulfilled, making stupid decisions because we're lost and we're looking for instant gratification and breaking the hearts of our women. So anyways, thanks for hanging in there. If you've watched this entire thing a half an hour, man, Bless you. It's awesome. Subscribe to my YouTube video, channel here, and I'll be putting out more videos as we go along. It's all about taking life to the next level, increment by increment, step by step, and not just necessarily shooting for the moon when there's parts of us that we don't totally believe that we're going to get there, right? So one step at a time, one day at a time, and I would love to hear anything that you have to say. So comment below, shoot me an email at johnny@johnnyking.com. Check out my website if you like, johnnyking.com, and we'll look forward to hopefully catching up, meeting you in person, or just catching you on the interwebs sometime soon. So anyways, take care, man. We'll talk soon. See ya.